Good afternoon, viewers. Welcome to our talk on what has been happening in Parliament over the last couple of days. Today being the fourth day of the consideration of estimates here at Parliament Building. There has been so much happening over the 4 days, and in our discussion this afternoon, I have two of our MPs who will be discussing with us the situation that occurred last night and, as a matter of fact, issues that would have occurred throughout the budget presentation for 2022. With me, I have Honorable Miss Natasha Singh to my extreme left, and also we have Honorable Miss Nima Flu Beth. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon to you. To you.
All right. So much has been happening over these consideration of the estimates, and there are some videos and tapes out there. The public has seen a few of those, and there's so much commentary happening in social media land. You're part of what has been happening, so you're the best persons to give your viewpoints on what has been happening. But before we go, I would like to, for those maybe, you never know, there are some people who have not seen what has occurred yesterday, particularly in the consideration and estimates. So we have a few videos that we'll show, but I will start with the topical one where we had the Minister of Local Government making some derogatory statements. So we will pull that up on the screen, and you'll have
The reason why this figure was higher in you gotta get dildo. That's what you're looking for. You
there you have it. We would have heard what the minister would have said. And this is not a form of heckling of any form. Nobody, he's actually standing, giving a presentation. The mic is on, the speaker is there. And I mean, if you go 30 seconds after that, you will realize that the speaker said absolutely nothing. Parliament went on as usual after that occurrence. Miss Natasha, I mean, after this as well, we had other situations that actually led to the suspension of our MP, Mr. Sherrod Duncan. But just before Mr. Sherrod Duncan came in and made those statements, he also attacked you.
Yes.
So let's hear some of what happened there.
So, thank you for having me this afternoon.
You're welcome.
You mentioned what has happened yesterday,
Hmm.
but I want to say to our viewers,
Hmm.
this is abuse. This is sexual harassment, and this has been happening since September of 2020.
Hmm.
Our first sitting, and I want to go back to that very first sitting because we want to put everything into context.
Hmm.
I would not have known Nigel Dharamlall to speak to him. I know he was a former PS and now he's a minister and so on as a public official. And my first budget speech, a new member of parliament, I got up to speak. And the first word he said to me in a heckling form is disgraceful, Kuli PNC. And I had to endure that and move on because what was required of me is to contribute to the budget debates. And I did just that. But that was the beginning of the abuse and the harassment and the racial slurs that I have endured since September 2020. And I have not said anything because I believe I'm a politician, I'm a young politician. I am new at what is happening. And so, because of my value system, the way I was brought up, my way of life, I have let all of that go. from since September 2020. But when do we say enough is enough? I'm a human being. I'm a mother. I'm a sister. I'm a daughter. And I'm everything. I'm a national leader. When do I decide that enough is enough of Dharmlal? And so I believe in 2022, in this budget presentation, I paused at the heckling because I presented on the 1st of February 2022, which was Tuesday.
Yeah.
And that coincidentally was International Hijab Day. And his heckles were targeted at my headdress,
Yeah.
at my person. And I paused while I was making my presentation and I addressed him and I challenged him on his heckle. You know what? The speaker after me and the speaker before me on the opposition side would have said to the speaker, pay attention to what is happening here. And during my presentation, the speaker offered nothing to me. Yeah, no protection, and he has that right, he has that responsibility to offer me as a member of parliament. More so as a woman, he has the authority to do something, and he did absolutely nothing. And yesterday was no exception. He did absolutely nothing. Dharmlal went on to make his heckles personal when he included my family. I come from a family where we were taught to be independent thinkers. And if my relative choose to be from his party, that's his prerogative. And I have a right to choose my party. And I'm a PNC, and I will continue to do what is necessary for my constituency. And Damal, in his madness, decides to make it personal with my family. I will say to our viewers, to my constituency, that as a leader, as a woman, I will always stand for what is right. I have said to our women folk that the members of the APNU AFC coalition, we are strong and we will stand up and we will represent ourselves and we will represent your rights.
Yes, I love that. And like you said here, this has been happening since
Yes.
2020. And if they want to stick us in the realm of what has been happening in this budget, from the very beginning of the
Yes.
budget talks, we have been seeing this. And I mean, you talked about the mention of your religion and the way
Yes.
you dress. And I mean, the speaker being
Yes.
of the same religion as you, he he offered
No
no
protection.
protection, no response, no anything on
Yes.
the matter. And
Yes.
like you rightfully said, it has been occurring over and over again. And what I want viewers to take away as well, this has been something that the PPP regime is accustomed to, and at the abuse of women, there are so many examples. If we make a simple Google and we pull up those news reports, there's so
Yes.
many issues
Attempts. Yes.
of that nature. Miss Beth would have made a complaint in the very beginning of her budget speech, which seemed a little bit emotional as well as she
Yes.
spoke about the matter. We have a video here as well that I would like to play. The starting of Miss Beth's speech in her
Go.
presentation for budget 2022.
Before I begin my presentation, I would like to publicly talk about the abuse being meted out to female member of parliament on the opposition side by some of the male ministers over there. Some, I am registering my concern because I do not think it is right for us to leave our homes to come into the parliament to deal with ministers who are abusive in their language. And I would like to register that concern to you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Registered.
the speaker simply said
Just a
registered,
No.
and that
yes
was the
of the
end of
matter.
that, the matter. So we see this now. This did not happen yesterday. It didn't happen in the consideration of estimate. This was at your budget presentation speech that
Last
you
week,
had
yes.
the last week, that you had the cause to make such a plea. So speak to us about that.
Thank you for having me on your program this afternoon. Yes, as the video would have shown, I would have made that plea at the beginning of my budget presentation because I would have complained before to the clerk of the assembly about the conduct of some of the ministers, the male ministers, and the language and the things they would say. For me personally, I have a zero tolerance on any form of abuse. And all the places I would have been, I'm a teacher of sports, working with children and so forth. I can tell you, this is the most toxic environment I've worked in when it comes to this form of language. I know about going on lime on the streets with the young men and liming at the football field and so forth, and you hear certain things. But I would have expected that being in the parliament and the highest office in the country to work, that you would have expected a certain level of professionalism and how things are being said and what is being done. To my surprise, that's not being done, and that's why I would have registered before this form of abuse that constantly goes on. And I'm telling you, you know, you make the report hoping that the speaker and whoever else is in charge will ensure that we are protected. But then you see nothing is being done, and that's why I went public. Because I'm confident as strong women, we can protect ourselves.
Correct.
We can protect ourselves. And so you're giving the opportunity to the necessary authority, the speaker, to ensure that the house on which he controls, he takes control of what is being said. I feel very disturbed, when you leave your home to come into an environment where you're representing the interests of the people and you have to be called names, very, very ugly names at this highest office, and nothing is being done about it. And last evening, what was said by the Minister of Local Government tells you exactly what goes on there. And for some on the government side, especially the women, none of them ever stood up to say, you people need to stop behaving like that. You people need to pull yourself together and stop using such language and all of that. They have not thought about it. We are leaders, and you have people looking, and when people look and you hear such remarks being placed in public, what are you saying to our young people? What are you saying to our children? What are you saying to our elders at home who would tune in on the radio or whatever to hear what's happening in budget, and you're hearing about all the other things? It's very sad.
Very, very sad. And one of the points that must be registered is that the event that happened last evening with the comment that was made was done again. This was not heckling. This was nobody
Yeah.
saying it secretly on the anything. This was a minister standing when he should have been answering a
Question.
question pertaining to his budget line, to explain to the public what the monies are being spent for. His response, that was his response, to
And
talk about somebody needing a dildo. That was his response. And most astonishingly, the speaker said not a single word. This was on the mic for everybody at home listening. It's on Parliament page, it's on YouTube. He said absolutely nothing to that. There was no suspension for that member. No, nothing was called. He did. I
it's
throughout the day, the speaker just allowed all of these things to happen, and clearly it met its boiling point last evening. Um, we also have another video. I mean, we showed a video of what happened last night, your budget presentation, where the you registered the point, but you weren't the only one. I've seen on, I think, one of the pages, they talked about the statement that was put out about the APNU
AFC.
AFC, where they're claiming that the what was said in that statement was a lie. And I mean, one of the major things said in that statement that it was something that was happening all along,
Yeah.
and it was registered by more than one female MP. And we have another video here where Miss Dawn Hastings, I think it was,
Yes.
Yeah.
who also registered that very complaint during her budget speech for another male PPP MP. So we'd like to play that as well.
The budget presented under the theme Steadfast Against All Challenges, Resolute in Building One Guyana. It would be remiss of me not to bring to your attention some of the disparaging and derogatory remarks made on my female colleagues on this side of the House by the Honorable Member Joseph Hamilton. Although I am not comfortable in echoing or repeating the words uttered, referring to our female parliamentarians as headless. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will repeat that highest forum in this land where we ought to encourage and empower our women parliamentarians to become the very best version of themselves amidst the unique challenges that they are facing. What message are we sending to our young women, especially when we throw remarks at a young, aspiring, indigenous woman with more than one subject CXC, Mr. Speaker, who I have no doubt can be the next.
So here we go. So this was last week as well.
Yeah.
In the beginning, when all of our MPs were making their speeches for the budget, we see two MPs having the cause to register their concerns for what the PPP male MPs were saying to them in terms of the heckling and the name calling, etc. So, with all of that happening, and last evening events as they played along, I guess what we will call boiling point, Mr. Sherrod then went into the assembly to make the point that, the speaker has been allowing this
Yes.
all
Minister to
day. It was
respond.
just happening all day. And nothing was being said or done about it. Now, this is when the speaker decided that he then had authority. All day he didn't have it to suspend anybody, even when the word dildo, we talk a lot about parliamentary words. If you've been looking at the presentations, there's a lot of talk about parliamentary words. And he didn't do anything for that. But because Mr. Duncan would have registered his concern and stood up, really, he stood up for the women
Yes.
in that parliament
Yes.
last evening. And although he was being threatened, he persisted that something should have been done and something must be done. And the speaker then called on the government chief whip to raise a motion of suspension. And I'm looking at a letter here dated the 10th of February, where Mr. Duncan has officially been written by the clerk of the parliament in regards to his suspension. And he would have received suspension for the 45th, 46th, 47th, and the 48th sittings. And in addition to being suspended, I mean, we must understand this was a case where he was standing up for our MPs. He was suspended for all these sittings. And in this letter, it also states that he will not be given or paid his salary for that time, and any benefits during that period as well will not be given to him. So we see the full force of the speaker as an MP would have stood up for his colleagues, his female colleagues in parliament. And with all the clips that are circulating with the minister making all these derogatory comments, there isn't even a talk of any sort of action against that MP. And I mean, we've been talking last week, this week, and we talk about transparency and democracy and all these things. And all the way we see is an oppression of the views of others. We see a grandstanding by the PPP MPs, and the Speaker has continuously showed his bias throughout these
Yeah.
Parliament sittings. And we presented the evidence here in terms of the videos that we would have showed and the discussions we would have had here. I don't know, Miss Natasha Singh. No, we just received this letter. What are your thoughts here now?
I am now learning
Learning.
about
Yes,
the sanctions against my colleague, and I feel really sad.
very emotional.
It's really, really sad to know that I would say we had a big brother, a big brother. Cheryl is seen like a big brother protecting his sisters from what has been happening, and then now he's suspended and wouldn't receive any of his benefits. How fair can that be?
It's not fair at
And
all.
then we are all the time making reports complaining about the behavior of these said ministers in the parliament, and nothing is being done. Why is it that that minister was not suspended?
No talks of
Nothing of that.
suspension to
Why
this
wasn't he
moment.
suspended?
Shanika, I want to say that Sherrod has become more of a brother to me. You will know when we sit in the National Assembly, he sits right
Yes,
next
next
to
to you.
me,
Yes,
immediate left.
yes.
And so we would share things during the sittings. Outside of that, he is nothing more than a strong person because we know of the attacks that they send to him. And we try to huddle and we try to give each other support. And he said to me yesterday, he said, Natasha, I sat in the caucus room
Yes.
and I heard it all. And when he got involved in with your family, I thought that was enough. And I couldn't stay here and not register my concern. And today, I feel today is a really, really sad day when a man, a male,
Let's stand
will
up.
stand up for the women who are abused. And this government, and Mansour Nadir, I have no regrets. He's a PPP member and does the bidding of the government. He would have caused such a letter to be written to sanction my brother, to punish him twice. And why is he being punished? For standing up, for representing his colleagues, his women folk colleagues. That is a sad day. But it goes back to the core, what they are doing to the people of Guyana.
Correct.
They are depriving them of the resources and they're enriching the small group, their families and their friends. They're not, you can't tell me that Darmlal couldn't have answered the questions that we were asking yesterday. But it's all a smoke screen so that the general public doesn't know what is happening. And to say today that Duncan will not have his benefits as a parliamentarian for the period which he is suspended for speaks
Volumes.
Volume.
volumes as to the real issue at hand. They will do everything
And anything.
to stop us, but we will stand firm and we will continue. And Duncan will not be affected. They can do whatever they want because we are a united group and we will stand together.
Yes.
United we stand.
Yes. So, I mean, it like you just said, it just registers the point of what the PPPC government is all about, and the way they decide to punish people who stand in opposition to the wrongs that they
Yeah.
do. And last night was no different.
Yes.
It was
But
absolutely no
Shanika,
different.
we have to bring a couple of things to our audience attention.
Yeah.
The Minister of Human Services would stand on the podium and try to champion domestic
Right.
violence issues. Last night, I can tell you I was present when the Honorable Vince Roy Jordan approached the Minister of Human Services, who was standing right there when Dharmlal was saying what he said, and asked her if she will make a statement. And you know what she did? She turned her back and walked away from the honorable member. She didn't answer, she didn't acknowledge him, she walked away. And that speaks volume.
Yes.
In this assembly, we have seen from last night to now that Dharmlal is trying to do damage control. We have seen the PPP started a PR campaign against me. And you know what? We are parliamentarians and we will continue to do the work, and that will not affect us. I want to say to our viewers, I want to say to my constituency that I have noted all of the concerns that are coming in, and I am okay, and I will be all right.
Yeah.
and
You're a
and
strong woman.
regardless of what they say or what they do, they have started a campaign against my religion and what is happening, and that is fine, because in Islam there are strong women who would have fought battles and many more battles like this and won. And so I draw strength from those stories, and I will continue to do what I do as a Muslim woman representing women in the National Assembly.
Definitely.
Definitely. Definitely.
Definitely,
I
sir.
mean, you've put it over so clearly. I don't know what else we could add. And you're very emotional when you speak of this, because it is something that speaks not just to you, but you made it clear this is what has been happening in the
Yes.
communities with the interactions, and these people would our the persons within those communities would have made so many complaints, and those were things that we also spoke about during these debates,
Yes.
Yeah.
and we see it played out on a different level here in Parliament. um, Ms. Flu Bess, I don't know if you have any other remarks as we wrap up to see what is happening currently in the consideration of estimates. And I would just like to say the consideration of estimates would have restarted today. And we decided, the MPs would have decided that they will proceed with the questions, because, I mean, it is important for the information and for the government to be held accountable for what is being spent. And it was that, with that in mind, the considerations are still being done, and we're still questioning, because we want to know what will happen with the money of our people.
Okay.
Miss Beth.
In my closing remarks, I would say to our constituencies and to our women, we will continue to stand strong regardless of all the attacks or abuse or whatever they're coming with towards us. We will continue to stand strong and represent the interests of our people. That is our role. I want to say to the persons who will be reaching out to me, but via text, calls to see if I'm okay. Yes, I am okay. We are okay. We will continue to stand up against it. And I want to encourage the women out there, do not accept any form of abuse, verbal, physical, psychological, any form of abuse. Do not accept it. Speak out against it. You have a voice, use your voice, and use every possible avenue to let persons understand it is an unacceptable form of behavior. And I want to thank you so much.
Okay. So thank you so much for your giving your part of what would have happened over the few days we have been here. And we will continue this conversation with our chief whip, none other than Mr. Christopher Jones. Welcome, Chief Whip.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. So we're discussing here the issue budget considerations, the walkout last evening, the suspension of the Honorable Sherrod Duncan from Parliament. You were part of meetings leading up to this entire suspension after the incident. We would like to hear what has happened.
All right. So thank you very much for having me, and good afternoon to your viewers. Just to put it into context, essentially, the APNU AFC members of parliament was subjected to 5 hours of constant onslaught. They were vile, racist statements that were being uttered by Niger Darmalal for that 5 hour period. And just for your viewers to get an understanding, yesterday when we were in the Committee of Supply, considering the estimates for the Ministry of Local Government, immediately after the ministry of itself, we then went to the various regions. And throughout that period, the subject minister happens to be Nigel Darmalal. Hence me saying that it wasn't a 1 hour period as the other ministers, but essentially this was just over 5 hours
Hours.
of continuous onslaught from Nigel Darmalal. At the commencement of the consideration of the estimates, it was Ganesh Maipal who led the questioning to the minister.
Yeah.
And from that very point, the minister started with his tantrum, seeking the protection of the speaker. As well, you had colleagues, members of parliament, asking the speaker loudly, Mr. Speaker, haven't you heard that? Mr. Speaker, aren't you going to do something about this and so forth? And then we went into regions 1 and then region 2. And that is where you had Nigel Darmalal started his onslaught on member of parliament, Sherwin Holder,
Yeah.
making statements to the effect that Mr. Speaker, to answer the mortician and it was Sherwin Dunk
Hold on.
Sherwin Holder who stood up and seek the speaker's attention and have the speaker mandate that Nigel Darmalal withdraw his statement, of which he did not. And Nigel continued. And then we went to region number 3, of which Ganesh Maipal happens to be the regional representative. And the same onslaught on Ganesh. And then we came to region 4. And then Nigel started to speak about the chairman of Region 4, who is not in the House, who can't represent himself. And I had to stand up and ask the speaker to have him withdraw that statement for the simple fact that Mr. Siram is not in the House. And then we went to Region 5, and Nigel started his onslaught on Viceroy Jordan, who happens to be the regional representative there, making a lot of racist statement in the House, open floor on his feet. Like, for example, Mr. Jordan tried to get the amount of monies that were allocated to the NDCs in that region. And Darmalal went to the point of which he was naming the various villages. And then he made specific mention to Bushlat.
Yeah.
And then he went on to say, but let me tell you something about Bushlat. Bushlat is an East Indian area. And those are words that you cannot use in the House. And right off the bat, the MP started to call on the speaker to upbraid Nigel to bring the House into some semblance of order. And that continued. Miss Natasha Singh Lewis at no point in time posed any question to Nigel Darmalal.
Yeah.
And therefore, the question that one has to ask, why is this a continuous onslaught? You heard her earlier, and it is not now. It has been happening for months since not only Natasha, but several of our female members of parliament, they have been constant attack on them. We've been saying on programs like these, we've been bringing to the public's attention these attacks. We've brought to the speaker's attention these attacks, but it continues. And unfortunately, it is the manner in which the speaker administers his authority in the House. Noting that he is in a particular situation in which He has been named by the People's Progressive Party Civic to sit as the Speaker of the National Assembly. He is a former PPP Minister of Government.
Yeah.
So obviously there is leaning towards the PPP. And therefore, when the opportunity presents itself for him to use the authority of the chair,
He does.
he does not.
He doesn't.
And that is how we arrived at where we arrived yesterday.
He uses it in a partial manner, I would say, because when it comes to the opposition MPs, he is quick to make statements
Yeah.
and caution them,
Yeah.
and he calls all the parliamentary procedures
Correct.
into action at that point.
Yeah.
But when it's happening on the government side,
Yeah.
there is just, I say something and nobody obeys me and I go on as normal.
Yeah.
I mean, he stood, but when Mr. Darmlal would have made that comment, he
And
didn't,
several others.
and he continued talking. There was literally not a pin of interruption
Yeah.
by the speaker.
Correct.
And I mean, one of the things that I can't recall in any one of our parliaments prior to it, all the speakers who may have had some sort of political connection to anybody, did the House descend into this level of chaos
Yeah.
with the name calling and the racism that is being displayed
Yeah.
in this sitting.
Yeah.
So I mean, this speaks volume to what is happening in the speaker's mind as he chairs these committees, etc.
Yeah.
And it must be noted, and if he continues down this line, I mean, thus far, we could probably say he's the worst speaker we have seen.
Yeah. MP,
Thus far.
let me say this as well too, is that essentially so we had what we consider the culmination of the 5 hours of onslaught.
Yes.
And I want to put this out there now because Nigel Darmalal is a mendacious person. All right? A very mendacious person. Nigel Darmalal took to his Facebook page and posted that his inappropriate response, he referred to it as a response, was as a direct result of Sherrod Duncan's heckling. Sherrod Duncan at no point in time was in the chambers. Sherrod was in the MP's lounge.
Yeah.
And as you would know, in the MP's lounge, there is the CCTV camera. So all of the MPs, whether on the government side or the opposition, you sit in the lounge, so you were being able to view the proceedings and hear. It was the constant attack on Natasha that Sherrod heard, and Sherrod left the MP's lounge and head to the chambers. And that is why if you see the footage, you will see Sherrod somewhere in the vicinity of Amanza Walton Desir's seat.
Yeah.
And Sherrod doesn't sit there because he
Right.
just came through the door. So Sherrod at no point in time was in the chamber. Then Nigel Darmalal went on to say, and this is a minister of the government, I mean, politically, you twist and turn the truth, but this is blatant lies.
Blatant lies.
Right? Nigel went on to say that the opposition were heckling his sister that died 11 years ago. Now, just to put this into context for the benefit of your viewers, on the questioning in terms of roads that are going to be constructed in several villages, Nigel Darmalal said that as well they are going to be building roads in the village of Lovely Lass,
Yeah.
of which happens to be the village of which our MP, Vince Roy Jordan, is from.
Wow.
Mr. Nigel Darmalal introduced into the conversation that and I'm quoting here, my sister is from Lovely Lass.
Yeah.
Myself and MP Amanza Walton Desir said then, well, oh, that is why you're fixing the road because your sister lives there. Mr. Darmalal at that point in time said, no, my sister died 11 years ago. Unknowing to me, unknowing to Amanza, and I'm pretty certain unknowing to a lot of people who heard that. Amanza Walton Desir immediately said, oh my,
My God.
I didn't know you have my
Condolences,
condolences.
yes.
You
Because I
understand me?
listening to the
But
video, I heard that when she
exactly,
offered her condolence,
exactly. But Nigel placed on his page that we were heckling his sister that passed.
his dead
I
sister.
mean,
That's what he said on his page.
what manner of person would do such a thing, right? To be heckling someone's relative who have passed. And it is such a blatant, disgusting lie that he placed that on his official Facebook page. And that is what I'm saying is that, listen, just the mere fact that he lied on two occasions in that statement about Sherrod Duncan, who was not in the chamber, about people heckling his dead sister. This is Nigel Darmalal is known for his propaganda. Nigel Darmalal also has a Facebook page, Life or Live Live in Guyana,
Live life, yeah.
right? Of which he used that platform to further hurdle his racist remarks on the APNU AFC MPs. I ask your viewers if they have the time and the patience and the tolerance to go look for that page, live in Guyana,
Live in Guyana.
live in Guyana, and you will see a post that was made by Nigel yesterday on that page, of which he has a dog, and someone photoshopped on the dog's head a hair, a wig that the women would wear from time to time. And next to that image, he has Member of Parliament Dr. Karen Cummins. It's a side by side. And I'll take your viewers and your listeners back to, I think it was on Monday, when Nigel launched an attack on Dr. Karen Cummins and using these words, and I quote, Dr. Cummins, where you get your wig from?
Yeah.
Is that
That was
imported
Monday.
wig or a local wig? And he went further and he used that platform that he has live in Guyana, and he has there a dog with a wig on top and side by side, and the image of Dr. Karen Cummins, a former minister of government. That is what we have to put up with in the National Assembly and have been putting up with. And that's why we say to people that what you saw transpired on the 29th of December, it wasn't just a spur of the moment. It was essentially a culmination of what the female MPs on the opposition side had to endure for months or over a year. I remind your viewers of the incident in which our member of parliament, Tabitha Sarabo Hali, was physically assaulted by PPP member of parliament Kwame Mokai, and there has been no sanction by the speaker, by the National Assembly on these persons. And it continued. And that is why on the 29th of December, doing the people's business and knowing that the speaker always turned a deaf and blind eye to our plea in the National Assembly. And we on the 29th decided, listen here, we are here as a result of 50% of the population of Guyana.
Yeah.
We didn't walk into the National Assembly. About 250,000 of Guyana's population voted for us.
Yeah.
And therefore, we are representing people. And we will not be silent. We will not be set in a corner. Our voices must be heard. You can hear my voice. You can then disagree with what I said, but you cannot deny me that opportunity of speaking. And that is why you had what transpired in the National Assembly on the 29th. And again, one would believe that here is an opportunity for us to correct all that transpired in the past. But lo and behold, when we got into the consideration of the estimates, it was right back to normal. Nigel Darmalal on top, and the speaker just simply saying, honorable minister, that is unheard of. I've been, by virtue of working in public relations for the PNC, I've been in the 8th, the 9th, I became a member of parliament in the 10th parliament. So I had the opportunity to experience Mr. Ralph Ramkaran.
Yeah.
And Ralph Ramkaran had a unique style. If, for example, Mr. Ralph Ramkaran chides a opposition member for heckling too loud or something of the sort, you bet the next time he opens his mouth, he will be chiding somebody on the government side. And that was a unique skill. So you knew when he chides the opposition, the government knows that you
They're
coming in.
next.
And he kept that balance. He kept that balance, even though being associated with the PPP and whatnot, but he kept that balance. Then, of course, we saw Mr. Raphael Trotman,
Yes.
who you continue to give credit where it's due. Because Speaker Raphael Trotman had the unique ability of bringing MPs together and having them work together. So, despite the fierce, combative, at times, debate in the House, you would have the MPs out and about in community exercise. He sent us to various regions together for PPP, for APNU, AFC, and you were out there. You spent about 2 days. You interact with school children. You tell them about the National Assembly, but at the same time, it is building a cohesion amongst the MPs. And then we had Mr. Bartland Scotland, without fear of contradiction, a ruler of a speaker.
Yes, yes, definitely.
He chided his own government that appointed him. At times, the government ministers would have said, he chides us more than he chides the opposition. Who is this man? But that is the level of fairness. But what we have here, unfortunately, is a series of unfortunate events in the National Assembly. And the question was asked of Mr. Manzur Nadir, sir, have you taken a look at what your legacy
Will look like.
as Speaker? As it stands currently, he is the first Speaker of the National Assembly of Guyana to ever have a motion of no confidence moved against him. And it continues.
He hasn't learned anything from all the back and forth. I mean, to the point of not being able to manage your house properly, even in your own discussions that you meet. I recall for the consideration for estimates when you were negotiating those timings. I mean, the opposition side has never been able to get anything that they want,
Yeah.
even with the most compromise in to the House.
Yeah.
The Speaker has never allowed any form of compromise. Anything that the opposition puts forward
Yeah.
eventually is struck down.
Exactly.
And absolutely nothing has been done about that. I mean, there are no other words to describe the Speaker in terms of his behavior. If he's not biased and partial in what he does, I don't know what he is. And all the events of this parliament session, the budget 2020 presentations and consideration of estimate, has reinforced what we would have seen
Correct.
with the speaker and with the conduct of the government side MPs throughout this debate. Um, I would like to say, and I'm sure you will say the same thing, that we stand with MP Sherrod Duncan on this matter,
Yeah.
because, like when you were fighting for the NRF bill to be dealt with in a proper manner,
Yeah.
with proper considerations and more consultation, um, we see the same thing happening.
Correct.
And this is considered a form of protest. I mean, there are not a whole lot of ways you can stop in regards to the seatings that we have stuff from going through. And I mean, making a formal protest in Parliament, like every other parliament out there, in the Europe, in Africa, we see MPs protesting,
Yeah.
because what happens in Parliament is extremely important to all the lives
Yeah.
in our country. Whether they supported the government or the opposition, whatever is done in Parliament will affect all of us
Correct.
at once.
Exactly.
So it needs to be done in a proper manner. So we have that suspension here. We have made all the points in regard to what would have happened. And we just want the viewers to understand this is what has been happening as we continue to consider the estimates. We do this so that the citizens can still understand and hear what the government intends to spend
Yeah.
in this regard. And I just noted that a decision was taken to continue questioning the MPs because the citizens of Guyana needs to
Exactly.
know what is happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
So on that note, I think we will be going back to the consideration of the estimates, and thank you for being with us today.